Welcome to The Explainer. I am so thrilled to have you joining me today. We're unpacking a super detailed article titled "The Battle for the Bench: Texas Judicial Elections Explained." It's written by Jeremy Sutka from the Collin County Democratic Party. Now, whether you're a total political junkie or just kind of a casual observer of the news, we almost always hear about those big, flashy races at the very top of the ticket. But this article? It brings our attention to something completely different, the often overlooked yet literally life-changing power of judicial elections. We're going to impartially map out exactly what the author's arguing here and why he believes these specific races are the absolute most important ones on your ballot.
Okay, let's dive into this. Here is our roadmap. 1. The hidden power of judges. 2. Texas's two highest courts. 3. The current partisan landscape. 4. Intermediate and new courts. 5. The Democratic challenger slate. And 6. Voting down the ballot.
Section 1. The hidden power of judges. You know, when most of us think about an election, our minds naturally just jump to the recognizable names, right? The politicians we see on television every single day, like Governor Greg Abbott or James Tallarico. But the article argues that the judges you almost never hear about actually have a much more direct impact on your daily life. I mean, these courts are deciding if a conviction actually stands. They're deciding if you get a fair trial. They decide whether a corporation can legally trample your rights, or if the government itself has overstepped its authority. The author makes a really compelling case that while the top of the ticket gets all the flashy headlines, the judicial branch is actually getting the final say on our real-world rights.
Section 2. Texas's two highest courts.
Now, to really understand why this matters so much to the author, we actually need a quick but absolutely crucial civics lesson on how Texas structures its judiciary. I want you to think about this question for a second. How is Texas different from most other states when it comes to Supreme Courts? Take a guess. Well, if you assumed they just have one big court at the top, kind of like the federal government, you'd actually be wrong. Texas has two highest courts. So the crucial point is that the power is completely divided. On one side, you've got the Texas Supreme Court. They handle civil cases. We're talking everything from contract disputes and medical malpractice to major questions about whether a state law violates the Constitution. But then, on the flip side, you have the Texas Court of Criminal Appeals. And this court has the absolute final say over criminal cases. That includes really high-profile death penalty appeals, petitions from people claiming wrongful conviction, and challenges to prosecutorial misconduct. Both of these are massive 9-member courts, and the judges are elected statewide in partisan elections.
Section 3. The current partisan landscape. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the number 9. Why 9? Because according to the text, every single one of the 9 justices on the Texas Supreme Court is currently a Republican. And every single one of the 9 judges on the Texas Court of Criminal Appeals is also a Republican. That is 18 for 18 across the state's two highest courts. The author doesn't see this landscape as an accident, but rather as a highly deliberate, decades-long strategy by the GOP. The article points out that a Democrat hasn't actually been elected to the Texas Supreme Court since the 1990s. The author literally views this as a monopoly, noting that Governor Greg Abbott has directly appointed 7 of the 9 current Supreme Court justices, which obviously gives the executive branch immense influence over the judiciary. Furthermore, the text highlights that Attorney General Ken Paxton actively campaigned against and successfully ousted 3 Republican judges on the Court of Criminal Appeals in 2024 simply because they ruled against him. So for the author, this concentration of power threatens the very foundation of fair justice in the state.
Section 4. Intermediate and new courts.
Let's zoom in on the regional races, because the article highlights incredibly tight margins here. Take the Dallas-based 5th Court of Appeals, for example. It covers several counties and hears major regional appeals, like the highly complex case of Carmelo Anthony involving a fatal stabbing at a track meet. Now, back in 2018, Democrats flipped this court blue, but in 2024, the court flipped right back to red. Why? Well, the author argues it wasn't a massive change in overall political leaning. Actually, he notes the district had more votes for Kamala Harris than Donald Trump. Instead, it flipped simply because voters stopped voting after the presidential race. Just look at this. They lost 7 seats by razor-thin margins, some were as tiny as 0.2%, literally just because people didn't finish their ballots. The article also brings some really urgent attention to the 15th Court of Appeals. This is a brand new court, minted by the Texas legislature in 2023. It has statewide jurisdiction to hear civil cases that involve the state or challenge state laws. Right now, all 3 current members of this court are Republicans appointed by Governor Abbott in 2024, and they've already ruled on some massive hot-button issues like marijuana policy and abortion.
The author stresses that this year is the very first time voters will actually get to have a say in who sits on this incredibly powerful new bench. Section 5. The Democratic Challenger Slate. And this brilliantly illustrates the author's proposed solution, a highly diverse slate of Democratic challengers stepping up to try and change that partisan balance. The article places a really special emphasis on Maggie Ellis, who is running for Chief Justice of the Texas Supreme Court. Her story is one of unbelievable perseverance. We're talking overcoming an abusive home, surviving childhood homelessness, and taking 16 years to earn her degree as a single mother. She's now a foster mother and actually made history as the first openly queer woman elected to a Texas appellate court. The slate also includes Holly Taylor, a veteran prosecutor running for the Court of Criminal Appeals, Audra Riley, a criminal district court judge in Dallas, Chari Kelly, a U.S. Army veteran and JAG officer, and Kristen Hawkins, who was actually recognized as Judge of the Year. And to be clear, the article also names several other highly qualified candidates stepping up for these courts, folks like Oki Aniam, Gisla Triana, Amanda Rechek, Andrea Plumley, Jerry Zimmerer, Mark Meyer, and Tom Baker. Section 6. Voting down the ballot.
So we're back to a single number, 6. That represents the length of the term these judges will serve if elected. 6 long years. For 6 years, the people elected this November will be deciding cases that intimately, directly affect your life, your family, and your community. And the author stresses that this is exactly why voters absolutely cannot afford to leave these races blank.
The article wraps up with this super powerful argument from the author. Quote, "The judges you elect this year will be the last line of defense against tyranny, corruption, and injustice." From the perspective of the Collin County Democratic Party, the courts are literally the last stop for protections when the legislature or the executive branch overreaches. And that's why they're practically pleading with readers to not stop halfway down the ballot.
Which leaves us with a really fascinating question to ponder. Knowing that the margins of victory in these incredibly powerful judicial races can literally be less than a single percent, how far down the ballot do you usually vote? Does this detailed breakdown from the Collin County Democratic Party change how you view those names sitting at the very bottom? Thank you so much for joining me to explore this complex and fascinating civic issue. Keep learning, stay curious, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.